What would you do if someone offered you a juice capable of granting eternal youth? Would you eagerly drink it, desperate to hold on to your youthful glow? Or would you hesitate, fearing the unknown cost? How much will you be willing to pay to remain young for the rest of your life? This is the story of a group of old women who were desperate to be young again. It all began in a very small village in the east, where a woman named Ma never aged. She lived her life in reverse, growing younger as each day passed. Ma was 65 years of age, but looked like one in her 20s. She was so beautiful and young that young men, young enough to be her sons, rushed for her hand in marriage. This angered their mothers to see their sons admiring a woman as old as themselves. Ma was of the same age as their mothers, but her youthful appearance seemed not to wane, deceiving young men who never knew that she was 65. One morning, the villagers woke up to realize that Ma was now selling a miracle juice. She claimed that the juice was the secret behind her youthfulness, and so many women rushed to her stand to purchase the miracle juice. To the amazement of everyone, all the women who purchased the juice miraculously began to grow younger. Their fine lines and wrinkles disappeared and were replaced with young and vibrant skin. However, the juice did not come cheap, as Umma priced it so high. Only the rich could afford the miracle juice, and this angered some poor women in the village that desperately wanted to be young again. A certain woman named Njideka, who had suffered in her marriage for over 20 years, decided to get the miracle juice. Her husband, for all these years, maltreated her and made her feel less of herself. He was a chronic cheat who did not hide his promiscuous life from her. Whenever she complained about his intolerable lifestyle, he either laughed and insulted her or yelled angrily at her, warning her never to confront him in her life. Njideka at this point was determined to regain her youth and her dignity. She had watched her beauty fade over the years, and with it, her husband's respect and affection. Her once bright eyes had grown tired, and her smooth skin wrinkled. The thought of regaining her youth filled her with a burning desire for revenge and hope. But there was one problem. Njideka could not afford Uma's miracle juice. The price was far beyond her means, and as much as she dreamed of being young again, she knew it would take a miracle to gather enough money. One day, after another bitter argument with her husband, Njideka made a decision. She would do whatever it took to buy the juice, no matter the cost. That evening, she sold the few pieces of jewelry that her late mother had left for her and borrowed money from anyone willing to help, making promises she wasn't sure she could keep. Despite this, her money was still not complete, so Njideka decided to approach her rich friend Adora, who was a widow. She believed that Adora would also be interested in the miracle juice, seeing how lonely she was. Adora lost her husband 10 years ago and was in search of love again. However, no man wanted her because she was old, and Adora was willing to do anything to find love again. When Njideka approached her and informed her of the miracle juice, Adora did not hesitate to declare her interest. Her husband left her with so much wealth, and Adora was more than willing to pay any price for the chance to be young and desirable again. Adora agreed to pool her resources together to purchase the miracle juice for both of them. For Adora, it was a way to reclaim the love and attention she once had, whilst in Njideka, it was about reclaiming her self-worth and dignity in the eyes of her wicked husband. The next day, Njideka and Adora approached Uma's stand to purchase the miracle juice. Uma greeted them with a knowing smile, as if she had been expecting them. Without a word, Uma handed them two small bottles filled with the glowing golden liquid. As Njideka handed over the money, she felt a surge of excitement and fear. Adora, too, looked eager, her eyes fixated on the bottle in her hand. Drink it tonight, but remember, Mma said in a low but serious voice. Youth comes at a price. Neither Njideka nor Adora paid much attention to Mma's warning. Their minds were filled with visions of their younger, more vibrant selves. That night, they both drank the juice, and the transformation was immediate. Njideka woke up the next morning and gasped when she saw her reflection. Her skin was smooth, her wrinkles were gone, and her body had regained its youthful firmness. Her tired eyes now sparkled with the energy that she hadn't felt in years. She smiled, feeling triumphant. Adora too was transformed. She looked like she had stepped back in time, her beauty and vitality restored. Word spread quickly through the village about Njideka and Adora's miraculous transformations. Women whispered in awe as they saw them walking through the streets, looking half their age. Men, including Njideka's husband, could hardly believe their eyes. Eze, her once wicked and cruel husband, was struck speechless by his wife's new appearance. He immediately tried to win her back, seeing how beautiful she was, knowing that she would not want to remain with him. Now that she was young again, he had no money to purchase the miracle drink and decided to do everything within his power to keep his young wife. Eze showered his wife with love, attention, and gifts, but Njideka felt nothing but resentment towards him. She had changed, not just in appearance, but in her heart as well. She no longer craved his approval, knowing that she had reclaimed her lost power. Adora, on the other hand, found herself being the center of attention from young suitors. Men who had once ignored her now vied for her affection, and Adora basked in the euphoria of her newfound admiration. For the first time in years, she felt alive and seen. All she was now worried about was who to choose among the numerous men who had declared an interest in marrying her. Adora and Njideka were now extremely happy to see how their life had transformed. They felt empowered, confident, and youthful again. It seemed like the miracle juice had solved all their problems. Njideka, seeing how obsessed her husband was with her, turned him into her slave. She decided that it was high time that her husband Izzy paid for all the terrible things that he did to her in the past. She knew that this was her only opportunity to make him suffer the way she had suffered, and Njideka, with each passing day, grew colder and colder as her desires for revenge intensified. She turned Izzy into her personal servant, forcing him to perform degrading tasks, all in the name of making him feel the weight of his past sins. No longer the meek woman who had tolerated his cruelty, she became a queen in her own home, and Eze her pitiful subject. Njideka ordered Eze to cook for her, something he had never done in his entire life. He struggled, fumbling with pots and pans, burning the food and cutting his fingers while chopping vegetables. Njideka watched with a wicked smile on her face, enjoying his every frustration. She would reject everything he made, throwing the food on the floor and forcing him to start over. She made him clean the house, scrubbing the floors on his hands and knees while she sat back watching him struggle. But this was only the beginning, as Njideka decided to extend her revenge beyond the walls of their home. She would take him to the village square and order him to carry her bags as they walked through the market. Eze, once a proud and respected man, now walked behind his wife like a broken man. His head hung low, carrying heavy baskets of goods, while the villagers looked on in shock. One day, in front of a crowd of bystanders, Njideka made Eze kneel before her to polish her shoes. The villagers whispered in disbelief, but no one dared to intervene. After all, they knew how badly Eze had treated her, and in some way, they believed he deserved it. But even they were beginning to feel pity for the man who had been reduced to nothing more than Njideka's personal servant. Njideka's desire to humiliate Eze grew darker. She would dress in the finest clothes she could buy with his money and flaunt her youthful appearance in front of the village's young men who trooped around her to get her attention. Eze felt so terrible about this. The love he now had for his wife made it difficult for him to revolt as he endured the humiliation and hoped that things would change. His heart ached as he watched Njideka, the woman he had once taken for granted, now command the attention of younger, stronger men. She laughed at his suffering, ignoring his pleas for mercy. The more she flaunted her power, the more broken he became. His ego was bruised in a way that he had never imagined possible. The once proud Eze was now a shell of his former self, completely humiliated and broken. His love for Njideka, though real, had been warped by the power she now held over him. Every day, he was reminded of the sins he had committed, but now he was paying for them in ways he never imagined. Adora, however, after weeks of basking in the attention and admiration from young men, finally made her choice. She picked a handsome, well-spoken man named Chinedu, who had been persistent in his pursuit of her. Chinedu was charming, and Adora, still drunk on the power of her youth, believed that he could bring her the love she had been searching for. They began to see each other, and soon talks of marriage filled the air. Adora was over the moon at the thought of finally settling down with the man that her heart desired. However, as the days turned into weeks, she began to notice something strange. The excitement she once felt when surrounded by men began to fade. The admiration that had once thrilled her now meant nothing to her. Chinedu's compliment, which had once made her heart race, was now meaningless. She found herself increasingly distant, not just from him, but from the idea of love altogether, and this made her wonder what could have gone wrong. One afternoon, as Chinedu showered her with love and affection, Adora screamed at him angrily, asking why he had to suffocate her with meaningless talks. She stared at him, his words blending into the background, and realized that she didn't truly care about him. In fact, she didn't care about any of the men who had pursued her. The attention she had once craved now felt like a burden to her, and she just wanted it to stop. Adora walked him out of her house as she sat in front of her mirror, wondering what was happening. Her beautiful youthful self, unrecognizable through the mirror, as Adora saw a deep sadness in her eyes. She had thought that regaining her youth would bring back the love she had lost when her husband died, but instead, it had brought her an emptiness she had never felt before. It was then that Uma's words echoed in her mind, reminding her that youth comes at a price. Adora's heart raced as she realized that the miracle juice was behind the emptiness that she now felt. She began to panic and wondered what she could do. That same afternoon, Adora rushed off to visit her friend Njideka, who she found commanding Eze to sweep the floors under the scorching sun. Njideka's face held a smug satisfaction as she watched her once proud husband suffer. Adora hesitated for a moment, taking in the scene before her, but then hurried over to Njideka, desperate for answers. Nji, something is wrong with me, Adora blurted out, her voice trembling. I no longer feel anything for Chinedu or any man for that matter. The excitement, the love, it's all gone. I feel hollow. Njideka paused, raising an eyebrow. Hollow? You finally have everything you ever wanted, Adora. You're young, beautiful, desired by men. What more could you ask for? But Adora shook her head, her eyes filled with panic. That's just it. None of it matters anymore. The attention, the admiration, it feels like nothing. It's as if my heart has frozen and I can't connect with anyone, not even myself. You think it's the juice? She asked cautiously. Adora nodded, tears pouring down her eyes. I didn't listen to Uma's warning. I thought youth would bring back the love I lost, but now I see that I've lost something far more important, my ability to care, to feel. It's like my soul is slipping away. Njideka's cold exterior began to crack as Adora's words hit close to home. For the first time, she looked at her own life, her obsession with humiliating Izzy, her growing detachment from others. Was she too losing something deeper in exchange for her youth? She had been so consumed with revenge that she hadn't noticed how bitter and empty her heart had become. Njideka froze for a moment as she recounted how wicked she had been, not only to her husband, but to everyone around her. Although she was now beautiful, her heart was ugly. It wasn't just Njideka and Adora. Other women in the village who had drunk the juice began to experience similar consequences. Some lost their memories, forgetting their children, their spouses, their entire lives before the juice. Others lost their emotions, becoming cold and detached, unable to feel joy, sadness, or love. Some even grew paranoid, convinced that everyone around them was out to steal their newfound youth. One woman, Ugochi, who had always been the kindest soul in the village, became paranoid and angry after drinking the juice. She started accusing her neighbors of plotting against her. Her mind clouded with jealousy and suspicion. She lashed out at her family and friends, pushing away the very people who had always supported her. The juice had twisted her gentle spirit into something dark and bitter. Another, Chinyere, who had been excited to look young again for her upcoming wedding anniversary, found herself unable to feel anything for her husband after taking the juice. What had been a loving and close relationship turned cold and distant as Chinyere no longer recognized the love that they once shared. She saw her husband as a stranger, and he, heartbroken, watched helplessly as the woman he loved slipped away not in body but in spirit. What can we do? Njideka asked Adora, who advised that they go pay Mma a visit to see what could be done. They were so worried and hoped that Mma could be of help to them. They arrived in Mma's home and found her old and frail. Njideka and Adora opened their mouths in shock, wondering what they were seeing. Mma, who had always appeared youthful and full of energy, now looked like an old woman, her skin wrinkled and her hair white as snow. She was hunched over, sitting in a rocking chair inside her small home, barely resembling the radiant figure that they once knew. Njideka and Adora exchanged shocking glances as their hearts pounded with dread. How? How is this possible? Njideka stammered, her voice barely above a whisper. Mma, you were just young. What happened to you? Mma looked up at them and smiled, her frail hands trembling as she gestured for them to come closer. Her voice weak as she spoke. The juice, she said, was never meant to last forever. Youth is fleeting, no matter how much you try to hold on to it. Adora felt a surge of panic. But we drank it. Will this happen to us too? She asked, her voice shaking as she glanced at her own reflection in a nearby window, still youthful and glowing, but now carrying the weight of a terrible fear. Man nodded slowly. The juice gives you what you desire, but it takes much more in return. It drains your life's force. That's why I told you youth comes at a price. She coughed weakly as her fragile body trembled with each breath. I had my turn. Now it's fading, and soon you will all face the consequences. Adora and Njideka froze in shock as they tried to understand what Mma was talking about. What they did not know was that Mma was cursed with her beauty never to grow old. She lived a life of torment and misery that made it impossible for her to die. Mma, despite being so young and beautiful, suffered from a curse placed upon her by her own mother, a woman who was raped violently by her father, a man that she trusted with all of her life. She hated being pregnant and spared no opportunity to curse her unborn child, knowing that she was going to die during childbirth. I curse you, O child of my womb, for taking my life. You will never grow old, but live your life saddled with sickness and misery. This she said seconds before she died, cursing her innocent daughter, who took her first breath in the same moment. This was the beginning of Mma's problems. Though her body was youthful, her insides burned with an invisible fire, her organs aging at a rapid rate, failing slowly as if they belonged to someone thrice her age. Whilst the women envied Mma because of her youthful looks, Mma wished to be like them. Her youth, though enticing, was a curse that tormented her very existence. Mma did everything within her power to break the curse, but nothing she did worked, so she lived her life in pain, hoping for the day that she would finally be free from the curse that had haunted her since birth. After years of fruitless searching, Mma had a dream where an old man revealed to her that the only way to break the curse was to transfer her youth to others. But there was a twist. The more youth she gave away, the more she would age naturally. But those who drank the juice would inherit not only her youth, but also the emptiness and hollowness that had plagued her heart for all these years. Desperate to be free, Mma woke up and began to sell the miracle juice, claiming that it was the secret to her youthful appearance. Women flocked to her stall, willing to pay any price to regain their lost youth, unaware of the hidden cause that they were about to inherit. Mma watched silently as each woman who drank the juice grew younger, their faces smoothing out, their bodies regaining vitality. But as they blossomed, Mma herself began to age. Her transformation was slow at first. Her hair turned grey, her skin wrinkled, her back hunched, but with each sale of the juice, Mma felt lighter. The pain that had terrorized her life for decades began to fade. The sickness that had tormented her disappeared as her body aged into its natural state. Mma finally felt peace. She was free. But for Njideka, Adora, and the other women who drank the juice, the consequences were far worse than they could have imagined. Though they regained their youth, they began to lose their sense of self. They became detached from their emotions, unable to feel love, joy, or even sorrow. Njideka, who had sought revenge on her husband, found that she could no longer care about anything. Her hatred, once so strong, had vanished, along with her capacity for love. Adora, who had longed for admiration, now found herself surrounded by suitors, but felt nothing for them. The attention she had once craved had now become meaningless. Soon, the women who had drunk the juice began to suffer from same pain that Mma had once suffered. They became cold, paranoid and distant. Some, like Ugochi, turned against their loved ones, lashing out in jealousy and suspicion. Others, like Chinyere, found themselves estranged from their families, unable to feel any connection to their husbands or children. The Jews had granted them youth, but it had stolen their souls. Realizing the terrible mistake they had made, Njideka and Adora decided to seek the help of Mma, hoping that she could reverse the effects of the juice. But when they arrived at home, they found her old and dead. It was already late. The only woman who they believed could help them was dead, leaving them to confront the consequences of their choices alone. Panic set in as Njideka, Adora, and the other women realized that there was no way to reverse that which had been done. Mma had taken the secret of her miracle juice to her grave, leaving them clueless on how to break free. Days turned into weeks, and the village became a shadow of its former self. The once vibrant and lively women, now youthful in appearance, were now empty and devoid of the joy and warmth they had once known. Njideka found herself no longer interested in humiliating her husband Eze. She was no longer interested in revenge, and Eze could not understand why his wife's eyes had turned cold and why the spark in her had dimmed. As the months passed, the effects of the juice became more pronounced as the women began to feel the burning sensation that came with the curse. The burning was like an invisible fire that tormented them day and night. Njideka and Adora, realizing that they could not undo their mistakes, gathered the women of the village who had drank the juice. Together, they decided to seek out a solution, but first, They had to destroy the remaining bottles of the miracle juice to ensure that no one else drank the cursed juice. They raided Mma's home and packed out all the remaining bottles of the cursed juice. Just as they packed the bottles, Njideka noticed one bottle that the drink seemed to look different from the other bottles. Curious, Njideka reached for the bottle and held it up to the light. Unlike the other bottles, which contained the glowing golden liquid that had cursed them, this bottle held a dark, murky substance. It was as though it had absorbed the very shadows around it. Adora, noticing Njideka's hesitation, approached her. "What do you think it is?" Adora asked, her voice filled with both fear and hope. Njideka's brow furrowed as she inspected the strange bottle. "I don't know, but it looks different. Maybe it's the antidote. Maybe Ma left this for us as a way out." The women gathered around, their faces reflecting a mix of desperation and curiosity. It seemed impossible that Ma, who had caused so much pain, would leave behind a solution. Yet, they were out of options. "We have to try," Ugochi said, her voice trembling. "If this is our last chance to reverse the curse, we can't let it slip away." With trembling hands, Njideka uncorked the bottle. The liquid inside emitted a pungent smell, like something long forgotten and rotten. "Who should drink it first?" Njideka asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Silence fell over the group as they all stared at the dark liquid, uncertain of what it would do. Would it cure them or worsen their plight? Njideka, without waiting for a response, gulped down the contents of the bottle. The room was silent, and for a moment, nothing happened. But then, she doubled over, gasping for breath as her body began to shake violently. The women rushed forward, panic setting in. "Njideka!" Adora shouted, holding her friend as her body convulsed. For several agonizing minutes, Njideka's face contorted with pain as her muscles tensed and her skin seemed to flush a deep red. But just as quickly as it began, the convulsion stopped. Njideka lay still, her breath ragged. "Is she dead?" Ugochi asked, fear evident in her voice. But before she could finish, Njideka stared, slowly sitting up. Her face, once a mask of torment, was now serene. Her eyes, once cold and detached, shimmered with warmth. "I feel free," Njideka whispered, her voice filled with awe. She looked at Adora, a small smile spreading across her lips. "It's gone. The emptiness, the pain, it's gone." The women gasped in disbelief. Their hope rekindled. "It's the antidote," Njideka murmured, her eyes wide with realization. "This is it. We can be saved." One by one, the women took turns drinking from the dark bottle. With each sip, the fire that had been burning inside of them, the hollow coldness that had consumed their hearts, began to fade. Slowly but surely, their emotions returned. Laughter, tears, and relief filled the room as they embraced one another, grateful to feel something again. By the time they had finished the bottle, the curse had been lifted. Though their bodies remained youthful, their hearts and soul were restored to their former selves. They no longer felt the consuming darkness or the unbearable weight of vanity's curse. With newfound strength, the women gathered the remaining bottles of the cursed golden liquid and poured them out into the earth, ensuring that no one else would fall prey to its deceit. Though their youth remained, they now understood that true beauty came from within, and the bonds they shared were far more valuable than any fleeting appearance. Njideka, now free of her anger, forgave Izzy, seeing how her anger for him had transformed her into a monster that she could not recognize. She knew she had to forgive him to enable her heal. Adora, on the other hand, found joy in her friendships rather than the shallow attention of men. The women of the village learned the hard way that remaining young without a soul to enjoy it was a hollow existence. Their story became a warning for generations to come that the pursuit of external youth could cost far more than anyone was willing to pay. If someone offered me a juice capable of granting eternal youth, I would remember this tale and decline. For no price is worth the loss of my soul, and no beauty can ever replace the power of a life lived with love, joy, and compassion. True youth is in the heart, not in the skin. Life is not just about appearances, but about growth, relationships, and experiences. To sacrifice these for eternal youth could be far too great a price. The lesson to be learned from this story is that we should be careful of the things we admire and wish for. Do not envy others because you do not know their silent suffering. Also, be wary of shortcuts in life because shortcuts often come with hidden dangers. True beauty comes from within, and no external appearance can replace a kind heart or a fulfilled soul. Last but not least, the grass is not always greener on the other side. Everyone has their own struggles, and what appears perfect from the outside may conceal deep pain. So, be careful of what you wish for. I hope you enjoyed the story.